Well, I'll call to order the February 15, 2018 business meeting. I'd like to begin by a moment of silence for the victims and families of the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. Mr. Krupp, would you please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, we're joined today by Mr. Chris Story, representing County Counsel's office. This may actually be Mr. Story's last opportunity to represent County Counsel's office in this setting, because he has taken a position with our Water and Environmental Services Department, and that becomes effective next week, I believe. So I just wanted to commend and thank Mr. Story for his outstanding service in the County Counsel's office. He's served me well as the county administrator, and I believe served the board well and all of the other county departments he's worked with very, very well. So just wanted to share that. Of course, to my left here is Mr. Kevin Moss, who is serving as your clerk of the board this morning. I'm going to start with a roll with Commissioner Hummerston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Chair Bernard.
Here. First off, I'd like to announce that the board will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now I'd like to announce that the board will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Housing Authority Board for the next items. And I'd like to introduce Housing Authority Commissioner Paul Reynolds.
Thank you.
And turn it over to Mr. Krupp.
Okay, so we have this morning a public hearing. This is a TEFRA hearing on the issuance of private activity bonds for the development of Rosewood Terrace apartments, and we have Mr. Chuck Robbins, who is the Executive Director for the Housing Authority, here to present this item to you.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Bernard, Don, Kevin. Thank you very much for letting me be here today. Excuse me. So we're here today to hold what's called the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, or TEFRA hearing. This is a requirement that will allow the Housing Authority to issue bonds for the construction of affordable housing project. This hearing has a number of elements to it. The first is to inform affected governmental units of a proposal to issue bonds within Clackamas County, and two, to provide residents and interested individuals an opportunity to express their views on the issuance of bonds and the nature of the improvements and project for which the bond funds will be allocated. The Housing Authority is requesting approval to issue $34 million in revenue bonds for the construction of the Rosewood Terrace apartments. This is a 212-unit apartment complex. It's located at 8810 Southeast Oddie Road. This is a rent-restricted, or what we call an affordable housing project. 100% of the rents at this apartment complex will be available to families at or below 60% of the area median income. And this restriction will be in place for a period of 60 years. So, as I said, this is the first step in the bond approval process. There's really no action that's required after the public hearing, except for what is included on the two consent agendas. So at the conclusion of this public hearing, we have on the the Housing Authority Board's consent agenda, Resolution 1925, and this is basically an amendment of an earlier resolution which authorizes the Housing Authority to issue and sell up to $34 million in revenue bonds for the project. Then also on the Board of County Commissioners consent agenda is a resolution declaring Clackamas County's approval for the Housing Authority to issue these bonds. So we have two items. The one at the county level, the county has to authorize the Housing Authority to issue bonds, and then the Housing Authority Board has to allow the Housing Authority to actually issue the bonds. So if it's complicated, blame the IRS. These are their rules. So, you know, with that, you know, I'd like to open it up. But, you know, there is one last thing I'd like to say is, you know, I'm glad that Chris is here. And, you know, this is, you know, probably the last time I'll get a chance to see him. And also want to thank him for all of the work that he did in helping us get to this point with this project. You know, he was the county contact to make sure that all of the, you know, the county interests were protected through this very complicated, you know, bond deal. So, you know, Chris, you know, there may have been times and he hated to see me, but he always took my calls, which I appreciated, and always responded, you know, quickly and professionally, and really appreciated. I'm going to miss you. You know, now I have to train somebody else. Glad I showed up today. Yeah. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chair Bernard for the TEFRA hearing.
Do any commissioners have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. As much for public interest as anything, do you have an anticipated interest rate?
You know, I don't have that. I can find that information and get that to you.
I'd be interested to know what we might be looking at. Would you expect that it would be lower than normal because of our AAA rating?
I think that it's normal because it's a tax exempt bond. You know, those tend to have lower interest rates. Recognize that this is not a bond that's being issued by the county. This is what they call a pass-through bond. So this is the bond that it's issued by the state. Housing Authority is the one that actually accesses those and passes them through. So I don't know that our bond rating has any impact, you know, on the interest rate, but I will get the interest rate to you. I don't know if that's... That was correct. Yeah, okay.
That's fine, thank you.
So what usually happens is the bonds go out to market and then people bid a price.
Yeah.
Like the Willamette View project came in way under what they anticipated they'd have to pay for interest, so.
Right. Since it's being issued by the state, it's based on the state's creditworthiness, not the county's.
By the way, what is the state's credit rating?
I'm not sure it's as good as the county's.
Not AAA.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing and ask if anyone would like to testify on this item. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, announce that the board action during this, there is no board action during this hearing. Board action for this issue will occur under the Housing Authority Consent Agenda, item 11.3, and Board Consent Agenda, item Health, Housing, and Human Services, item A1. And next, we'll move on and ask the, to the Housing Authority Consent Agenda and ask the clerk to read the Housing Authority Consent Agenda by title.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have, in the matter of approval to execute the General Depository Agreement, Housing and Urban Development Form 51999, approval of Resolution 1925, approval of amendment to Resolution 1923 for additional private activity bonds for the Rosewood Terrace apartment project, and Resolution number 1926, approval of amendment to Resolution number 1924 to update the name of the limited partnership to Pedcor Investments 2016-CLV.
Great. Do any commissioners want to remove any item from this consent agenda?
No, Chair, but I do have just want to clarify what my response will be as I explain throughout this project. I support the Housing Authority's efforts in a number of ways, and I think most of you realize that I'm supportive of that. This particular agreement, and the way it's structured is what I've had issues with from the beginning. It's just really the math, and I really have always felt that affordable housing ought to be affordable. And the cost to build it ought to be affordable because it is under the guise of affordability. And unfortunately, this one, I think, granted, it's expensive per unit or per door, and it's all for a good cause. And I know this project will move forward without my support. That's not the point here today. I just want to just explain why I will not be supporting it, and that is that I do think it could have been crafted a little bit better, in which would ensure perhaps, frankly, lower cost in the end. Whether that's per door or whether that's per year or whether that is the county's share of what we call the developer fees in there. But it's a very complicated agreement, and I appreciate staff looking and working hard on this. But there are some details that just gave me some discomfort. So I'll leave it there, and I want to explain my vote both here on this consent agenda and both on the consent agenda for the county commission.
Okay, and with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Housing Authority consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No. One no.
Yeah. Abstaining? That's 4-1. Motion carries.
5-1.
Oh, 5-1. Oh, yeah. All right. With that, I'll announce that the board will adjourn as the Housing Authority Board and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting. And thank you, Paul, for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to citizen communication. We have Yvonne Lazarus and Tim Lusher. Yvonne, please give your name and where you live.
My name is Yvonne Lazarus, and I live at 2063 Southeast Torbank Road in Milwaukee. I'm here to speak to you today about a word, and it's called integrity. You hardly hear this word anymore, any place. All of you should have a little plaque that's on your desk that says, I'm a Clackamas County Commissioner, and I serve you with integrity. That's who I am. You don't. You should. You have been compromised. It isn't nice, and you should, the four of you, take a stand and remove Jim Bernard, because he isn't going to step down. He made that very plain. He said, no, I am not going to step down. He said it right out. That leaves it to you. You have reputations too. You owe it to yourselves. You owe it to Clackamas County. You owe it to your co-workers. You owe it to your family, your neighbors. This is a hard job you have. This affects you. He didn't stop to think when he did what he did. And that's just part of Jim. This isn't my first time I've talked before you. It may be for the two of you, but it isn't for Paul and Martha. Do the right thing. It's the hard thing. Let's get on with business. You need to have him step down. You need to do this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim?
I'm Tim Lucier. I've spoken here the previous 2 weeks in a row. This is the third time I've ever appeared before this body. Jim Bernard, you need to resign. You attacked a woman. You said, screw you, Julie Parrish, to an elected woman. That violated policy 2017-93. And Sonia, you don't have to listen. I understand that you've already defended week after week. Last week, you told a woman to just move on. Very inappropriate behavior. Martha Schrader, for 2 weeks in a row, also defended Jim Bernard's behavior. Jim Bernard, from a Facebook page called Clackamas County Chair Jim Bernard, used the words, "Screw you, Julie Parrish." And for the record, for the folks at home who can't be here on a Thursday morning, I wish we had Thursday night meetings again, but I know you voted against them again, Jim Bernard. Last week, I asked for a vote of no confidence. Last week, I asked all of you to vote again on 2017-93, the memo that Chair Bernard signed last fall, which said, line by line, that we were going to have civility, you weren't going to attack people for partisanship. You, Jim Bernard, before you skipped last week's meeting, the week before, when you went down to Salem last week, apparently to be around Julie Parrish, who you slandered with this quote, excuse me, libel, oh, excuse me, I don't know, I'm not a legal attorney, so I can't use what that is. You said, "Screw you, Julie Parrish." Any other normal person except Jim Bernard would resign for attacking a woman senselessly because she wanted, oh, excuse me, she lost an election. It's unbecoming of Clackamas County. You violated the Spirit Code, which goes on right there every week. Spirit, you were disrespectful. You've been called out 3 weeks in a row by numerous random women that I've never met to ask you to resign. And Martha Schrader, again, week 3, can filibuster and fill time and say, oh yeah, we work with Julie Parrish on veteran issues. But you're a bully, Jim Bernard, and you came to power because you said John Ludlow was a bully. You said the Koch brothers are funding my opponents and I need to fight back from the Tea Partiers. And yet you're here, I don't know, with years of conflict of interest accusations, with years of people that you've ran over who are here today testifying, not about your conflict of interest, but about your behavior, about your comments. And you deleted that Facebook fan page during the meeting when you were called out by a woman named Darlene, who can't be here today because she has the flu. She tried to make it last week. And during the meeting, you deleted it. So apparently the ethics complaints that have been filed or will be filed, the lawsuits that will or won't be, I don't know what's happening, Jim Bernard, but you need to resign. And I was the only one that asked you last week to resign, and you didn't, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago. And you continue to smirk and smile and think this is funny, but it's not. So I have 20 seconds left. So I'm going to ask you again, are you going to resign, Jim Bernard?
No.
Okay, so you're going to continue to be an embarrassment to Clackamas County, to harass employees or citizens or whoever you're going to do that. Are you going to re-sign the pledge before you resign? No. You need to resign.
May I say something very quickly before I get up?
Sure.
This reflects on all of you. I'm going to know truly who you are. It really does. Thank you.
Diane Gruber, Les Poole. Oh, Diane, you have 2 cards in here.
Les Poole. I live in Gladstone. I don't think there's a lot that needs to be said after that. Not much needs to be said. Just a reflection. Our actions speak louder than our words. And when our words are our actions, and they show a pattern of troubling behavior, I'm just going to call it that. No one here is interested in whether or not technically you violated this rule or that law or that policy or that pledge. The legal aspects of it are so secondary. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about doing things that bring people down here and get their heart beating and racing like mine is. I know no one else in this room has got a heart that's racing like mine. I want to thank you, Vaughn, for coming down here and speaking so that I don't need to say much. But I'm going to ask a question. It's too bad I have to ask it of Chris because I'd like to be here seriously complimenting him, and I'm going to have to change gears and thank him for his expertise The mess that TriMet created over the trolley trail for light rail would take hours to discuss, but you waded through it. You've always been very noble. Every once in a while, when you're going through the channels, all of a sudden you see Chris, you know, in Oregon City volunteering there as well. So I know the county or the board will miss you, and you're jumping into the sewer. That's the troubling part. But that's Chris. And you know, with the rest of my time, I know like I'm shifting back and forth. But last week I mentioned my friend Richard, Mr. Langdon. Mr. Langdon could have filed a lawsuit. I could have filed a lawsuit. But I didn't. And I really struggled with that when I was attacked. And it's all on video. It's all on video. And when I didn't do that, you know what I was doing? In a strange way, I was enabling. That's what I was doing. And I'll bet if I would have sued Jim Bernard in 2016, he wouldn't have gone after Julie, and he wouldn't have done a lot of things he's been doing. The only accountability we now have is for Jim to resign. And we want to know, when are you going to resign, sir? When?
Diane?
Hello, I'm Diane Gruber, a 30-year resident of West Lynn. And just for the television cameras, I'd like to read what spirit means, allegedly, in Clackamas County government. I quote, "Clackamas County employees work to serve the public and enrich our community. In that spirit, we pledge to hold ourselves to these standards at all times in our interactions with customers and with one another. Service," starting the spirit, you know, S-P-I-R-I-T. Service. "In all our actions, we respond to customers promptly in all matters, especially when it is hard to do so." I'm only reading some of these. Professionalism, this is the P. "In all our actions, we are the face of Clackamas County." Think on that a moment. Okay. Integrity. "In all our actions, we acknowledge and learn from our mistakes. Demonstrate fairness in interactions with others." Now we're on to the R, respect. "In all our actions, we accept personal differences and value others' perspectives. Communicate in a positive and courteous manner." This is the biggest flaw in, I believe, in Jim Bernard's behavior. The I is individual accountability. "In all our actions, we accept and demonstrate personal accountability at all times." The T is for trust. "In all our actions, we remain approachable and objective. We right our wrongs in good faith." And the conclusion is, by incorporating all of these values, service, professionalism, integrity, respect, individual accountability, and trust into our daily routines, we can better serve our customers, ourselves, and our projects. We're always looking to improve. That's the Clackamas County spirit. So, Mr. Bernard, you are a bully. You don't abide by these values that you claim to embrace. Are you going to resign?
No. I would like to say that one of the things that is true in what you just said is that we take responsibility for our mistakes, which I have. I not only apologize publicly, I apologized here. I apologized to Julie personally. I apologize to the people sitting with me that they have to go through this. I made one mistake. And, you know, it was not a county Facebook page. I have a constitutional right, just like everyone else, to speak my piece. I took it down because I misspoke, and I apologize for that. And I take responsibility for that. And that's what spirit is. When we make a mistake, we take responsibility for our errors and do better next time. And that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
I'm going to say that I'm borrowing her last 30 seconds with her consent. I am going to say this one last time. Jim, there is a pattern here. You didn't make a mistake. And it doesn't matter whether it's legally your page or not. It represents the county. You represent us. Your excuse does not fly. And sooner or later, because you're so compromised, the folks are going to get tired of it. So we're going to have an investigation like we did with Mr. Ludlow when he misspoke. It's all in the Oregonian. I would expect and I would demand that internally. And I would ask, when is it going to happen, not if? And at the end of that investigation, then we'll decide what you should do. Thank you.
Don, could you address the policy of, we talked about this morning, my personal Facebook page?
Certainly. And first off, let me just say, I don't supervise the Board of County Commissioners. What you say and do is primarily an issue between you and your constituents in the county. What I understand is that Chair Bernard posted these remarks, and I don't think anybody disputes the fact that they were offensive and inappropriate, posted these remarks on his personal Facebook page. That Facebook page is neither managed, monitored, or supported by the county or any county resources. It's also true that the content of Chair Bernard's remarks did not involve the conduct of county business. And that is significant because if you, even if you post something on a personal Facebook page as a public official that involves county business, that matter is technically a public record. But the remark made referred to a statewide ballot initiative and a state legislator and did not relate to the conduct of county business. So that in no way sort of changes or makes any more acceptable the nature of the remark. Mr. Bernard has admitted that he's made a mistake and called his actions just plain wrong. I think it's important that as we move and look forward that we treat all people with respect and professionalism. I should also speak to the issue that Mr. Poole just raised, the question about whether or not an investigation is appropriate or warranted. The matter that Mr. Poole referred to regarding Chair Ludlow and former Commissioner Smith related to interactions involving directly with county employees, which is why an investigation was warranted in that case in order to ascertain what the facts of the matter were. There was a formal complaint filed by that employee at the time that made certain allegations for which we retained an independent investigator to ascertain what was factual and what was not factual and what recommendations would be given in terms of appropriate corrective action to make. And in this case, this involves a fairly straightforward matter that involves a statement that was made, and there's no disputing that that statement was made. And it doesn't involve the engagement of a county employee, so it's not involving any kind of violation of the county personnel codes or the county rules. I'll say this as well, because again, I don't supervise the individual commissioners, but I do have responsibility for the management and supervision of a large body of staff who are county employees. We have some 2,000 employees, about half of which work for departments and directors that are under the direction of the county administrator. And we have in the county code a very specific list of the kind of things that relate to conduct of county employees in the conduct of county business. And so when I asked myself the question about, well, so if one of my department directors had made a similar kind of comment on their own personal Facebook page, whether or not there would be just cause for some kind of discipline in that regard would really and only depend upon whether or not what was said in some particular way interfered with that individual's ability to be able to conduct their job. And that would relate primarily to those employees who work at will under the direction of the county administrator. Other employees, employees that are represented by unions, they're classified employees that are not working at will. If they had made a similar kind of comment on their personal webpage or our Twitter account, they might hear from me or a supervisor about the judgment being used or involved, but it would be very hard to identify whether or not discipline would be warranted. It could only be warranted in the case as to whether or not what was said actually interfered with the individual's ability to do their job. So that's the extent of what I can say and offer with respect to this. So.
All right.
Chair, I'd like to just respond. I just want to add that, you know, the county commission has the power to appoint people to this commission. Commissioner Fisher was appointed to this commission. The county commission does not have the ability to remove anyone from the commission. That's how it's structured. So we don't have that ability. So I know that Ms. Lazarus spoke to that. So I just want to clarify that we don't have that power. And any actions we take could be actually in violation of everything we've cited here today. So we're in a very tough spot. So we are trying to abide by our own rules, our own ethics, our own the 2017-93, the resolution, and also the spirit, those code standards and ethics. So I just want to make that explanation and perfectly clear that we don't have the power to do anything here.
No, we're done with citizen communication, and we have a couple of hearings to go through, so appreciate it. With that, we'll move to a public hearing. Oh, wait, please note this public hearing is being continued to March 22nd, so turn the page.
Okay, so we have a public hearing to consider a boundary change petition to transfer property from the Centennial School District to the North Clackamas School District, and we have both Mr. Chris Story and Amanda Keller from the County Counsel's office to address this, or is Amanda here?
Amanda is going to let me handle this one, so I'll be happy to chime in. Just in part a briefing for folks who are watching at home and the board. While you are the Boundary Commission and you process these quite a bit for special districts, this is an unusual one in that school boundaries don't change very often, and usually the state legislature is involved when they do. But there is a mechanism statutorily for this to occur, and we have received a petition that satisfies the criteria in that statute. It's citizen-driven. A group of citizens gathered the necessary number of signatures, submitted them to our clerk. They were validated and submitted. The odd thing that I wanted to flag for you is the statute does not appear to give you any discretion about the choice of whether or not the boundary change happens. It says, if they gather the signatures, you shall do this. Because it implicates two different counties, both ourselves and Multnomah County. First, as the largest impact here in Clackamas County, you review it. There is an opportunity for public testimony. and then we refer it to Multnomah County for their consideration, and then it comes back for final action to Clackamas County. But again, I'll emphasize the odd thing is you have public hearings, but no discretion. The remedy for this, I will just note to any legislator listening, this is not a well-written piece of statute. So the remedy that's available to the participants is further signature gathering. I will note that we reached out to the 2 school districts involved to give them a specific notice that this item was occurring. And we have received a letter from Centennial School District asking that we continue this hearing into March, which is still within our statutory timeline for when people may hold a hearing. And it's my understanding that the board is willing to honor that request from Centennial School District. So we are, as staff, preparing to continue the hearing on our end of the first preliminary hearing to March 22nd. But there may be some folks here, and because we did advertise the public hearing, we should, I would recommend allowing them the opportunity to testify.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing for the boundary change transfer from Centennial High School District to North Clackamas School District, and I have some folks who'd like to testify on this matter. Pam Shields and Charlene Gerard. Come on up. Just give your name and where you live.
I'm Charlene Giard. I live at 261 Southwest Nancy Circle in Gresham, Oregon.
My name is Pam Shields. I live at 8037 Southeast 162nd in the Centennial School District.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
I am also the current board chair of the Centennial School Board. Pam is the current vice chair of the Centennial School Board. I'm also a licensed principal broker with RE/MAX Equity Group Realtors, and I disclose this because my being a real estate agent, this involves the industry in which I work in. This request by Holt Homes to transfer 326 acres from the Centennial School District to the North Clackamas School District is outrageous. This request has nothing to do with student education or families. It is simply the request of a greed-driven builder-developer making sure that he can build high-end homes and get more for the homes if they are located in the North Clackamas School District instead of the Centennial School District. Holt Homes' real estate agent has allegedly described our district as inferior to the North Clackamas School District and has made previous attempts to have lots transferred. We currently have a number of new home developments in our district, and none have found issue with marketing their homes in our school district. In fact, earlier this year in a New York Times article entitled, "How Effective is Your School District? A New Measure Shows Where Students Learn the Most," the Centennial School District yielded a national ranking of the 99th percentile for student growth. The study tracked cohort groups from 3rd to 8th grade during the academic years 2008 through 9 and 2014 to 15 in state assessments for English, language arts, and math from the state assessments across the country. A couple of years ago, while the state of Oregon was still ranking schools based on the Oaks assessments, Centennial Middle School received a level 5, or model designation, which means that the school was in the top 10% or the elite top tier. I understand that by statute you must consider this request. However, I want to make it perfectly clear to you and to Holt Homes that the Centennial School District will fight to overturn this decision all the way to a special election. Our families will be informed of the unnecessary transfer of our children to North Clackamas schools, the distance that our children that are located in the south end of our district will have to travel to and from school each day, and inform homeowners of the potential increase in their property tax bill as a result of the transfer of land. While I understand that you cannot vote no or reject this request, I do hope that you agree that this is a frivolous and outrageous request. the unnecessary shuffling of children from one district to another, the increased property tax costs to the homeowners in the 326-acre parcel, and all of the time and money now being spent to fight this issue. Also, one builder-developer can line his pockets with additional dollars. That's wrong in my book. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'd just like to add, and I appreciate the input that you gave the board as you tried to outline this merger. If you look at the ORS, it's 33.0.090, and the heading is mergers. And when you read through the context of that, just the very first paragraph, it says the district boundary board, then you're serving as that, enter an order directing a school district to be merged with an adjoining school district designated by the board if it finds the continuation of the district is not required because of geographic factors affecting transportation or because of sparsity of population. So the intent, it appears, is different than how this petition process has been used. And it does have an effect on the children that we serve. And as our chair, Shar, has outlined for you, it has a negative impact on our children in terms of their transportation, which basically this is it is actually saying that this should be something that we should consider as a detriment, and yet if we go forward with this, it will become a detriment rather than alleviate. So we'd really appreciate that you review again with your counsel, and I guess it's going to be new counsel with Amanda and Keller, and that you'll have an opportunity to discuss this with her, that you'll take an opportunity to reach out to your school district, North Clackamas, and talk with them about the impact it'll have on them, as we will have this conversation with Multnomah County as well. And as our Chair Giarda said, we will be continuing to discuss this with you, and we do have the intent of moving forward so that we can resolve this in the favor of our students and our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll close the public hearing and continue this hearing for a date specific, March 22nd, 2018. Okay. With that, we have another hearing. We have a discussion.
So the next item is a public discussion item, and I'm going to invite Laura Zentner, who is our Interim Director of Business and Community Services, as well as Nate Boderman, representing County Counsel, to the dais. This is a matter involving a resolution approving an amendment to the City of Wilsonville's Year 2000 Urban Renewal Plan. This is a public discussion item, technically not a public hearing, but as a public discussion item, there is an opportunity for the public to address the board. So, Ms. Zentner?
Good morning, Chair Bernard and Commissioners. My name is Laura Zentner, as mentioned, Interim Director with Business and Community Services. Before I give the background information on the proposed Wilsonville Urban Renewal Amendment, I would like to introduce two staff from the City of Wilsonville and ask them to come to the testimonial table. We have Nancy Kreschauer, who's the Community Development Director with the City of Wilsonville, and then Nick Popanek, and I hope I said that right, who's an urban renewal independent consultant working for the City of Wilsonville. And they're going to be available to answer the more technical questions that you may have throughout the discussion. So before you is a staff report and a resolution regarding the proposed amendment to the City of Wilsonville's 2000 Urban Renewal Plan. And the amendment would do a couple of things. It increases the life of the Urban Renewal District by 3 years to 2023. It increases the maximum debt allowed under the plan by an additional $14 million. The fiscal impact to the county is over 3 years is $2.6 million approximately, and that's about $860,000 a year. The additional $14 million in funding will be used to fix what's called the Beckman Road dip and to construct a bridge over Beckman Creek. It is important to note that this project increases the safety of travel for all modes of transportation and will facilitate future development in the Frog Pond area, and which will ultimately increase the assessed value and bring in more taxes. Another important point, the proposed increase in the debt exceeds the city's authority under Oregon Revised Statute. Therefore, the city must obtain what's called concurrence of 75 of the taxing districts in the urban renewal area. And let me note that that 75% is based on the tax rate. So the county is an important player in amending the urban renewal plan because we have one of the higher tax rates at $2.40. It is my understanding that the Westland-Wilsonville School District has already passed a resolution approving the plan, and that the city of Wilsonville will bring their resolution forward on March 19th. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. We have the staff here from Wilsonville to answer questions and would recommend the board approve the resolution.
Okay, questions?
Can we wait till after, are you going to present? Or are you just here for questions?
They're here for questions.
Oh, okay.
Ken? Ken?
Yeah, I have to say I have some problems with this, and I'm a little bit torn because I really like to support the efforts of our cities, and I certainly don't object to fixing a bridge or building a bridge or the expansion into Frog Pond. Those things have value. What I do have a problem with at this point is normally urban renewal is used for a blighted district, a blighted area. This doesn't appear to be the case. And $2,608,000 when we are trying to figure out how we're going to house people who are unhoused, let alone many of the other social services problems that we have, is a big hit to take. So I'd like to see us go back to the drawing board on this and see if there's a way to significantly reduce that. It isn't as if this area is economically depressed, or that the city is an economically depressed city. It is one of the fastest growing and wealthiest communities. And this sacrifice essentially is a sacrifice that the rest of the county, including areas that are significantly underserved, would be making. So I've got some real problems with it, and I will leave it at that.
Commissioner Fisher?
So the school district is in support of this? And what about firefighters, the fire district, other special districts? Because they will also lose tax revenue with this expansion.
Yes, we've met with the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue staff, and they're also on our Urban Renewal Task Force, which is the task force that recommended that we go forward with this amendment. The staff from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue expressed support for it, mostly because of the safety conditions on Beckman Road in this area. It's a very narrow rural cross-section. And this project will not only build a bridge, but it'll also improve safety because it'll have bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides. And right now there's this really steep vertical curve that has sight distance issues. They also expressed that it would improve emergency response times for them. So they found that to be an advantage.
Okay, so they do support?
That's the...
and when you say staff supports, I don't know what process they went through, who was informed, but I just know that when you're talking about reducing tax revenue for fire services, it's something we have to weigh carefully.
Correct. And because of the 75% limitation on the concurrence, the taxing bodies that we need to get concurrence from, we were not required to go to their board. So we met with their staff and we asked for input, reached out to all the other taxing districts with letters asking for their input and expressed their concerns, and we have not received any responses in any concerns, written negativity.
Okay.
Paul?
Yeah, so Nancy, I guess, or one of you folks, I'll ask a question. That is there, getting to Commissioner Humberson's earlier point about, is there a means of making an amendment that would do a carve-out for parts that are within the city boundaries and leaving the unincorporated so we can put these potential resources to use for our more immediate underserved needs? I presume that the added tax revenue of the urban renewal district has generated a lot of money that has come into the city as a result of the increased property valuations. So that would seem to be an existing revenue stream. I just wondered if that has been weighed, or if there's a means of, again, taking the unincorporated piece out of the out of this. Please help me with that.
Well, we would need this county's concurrence regardless of whether or not some properties are in or outside the urban renewal area. We need approval because some of the properties are within the urban renewal area. And so that, I'm not sure how to explain, but we already have.
So on the
we already limit
financial,
our tax.
right, on the financial side of things, the urban renewal absolutely has an impact on all the affected taxing districts, the county, the city, the fire district. Urban renewal in the city of Wilsonville has a longer and more successful history than we've seen in a lot of other communities. This particular urban renewal area, the year 2000 plan, started off with a frozen base of 45 million and now has a current value of 460 million. So the value is tenfold what it was when it was created. The city of Wilsonville's other urban renewal plan, the West Side plan, started off at 18 million and now has a value of 531 million. That's 30 times what the initial amount is. So the city of Wilsonville has been using urban renewal as a tool to invest in projects that grow the tax base. And as Commissioner Humbertson said, this has led to Wilsonville being one of the fastest growing and successful communities around. I think urban renewal played a role in that success. With that large success, the city of Wilsonville was also a pioneer in sharing those revenues with the overlapping taxing districts. So with that very strong growth in taxation, that would have led to a lot of this tax revenue going to the urban renewal areas. Instead, the city for years now has voluntarily under-levied their tax collections to bring in only $4 million per year. That has led to the urban renewal areas existing for a longer period of time, but collecting less money per year and sharing more with the overlapping taxing districts. In terms of finding some sort of other financial approach to building this bridge, certainly the amendment right now calls for this $14 million increase in the maximum indebtedness to pay for the project. There could have been, if there were other funding sources available, a lower amount. I'm not the engineer for the city, but this is the cost of the project that was come up with, and the city does not have the additional funding sources, as I'm sure the county struggles with when they're making budgetary decisions as well on transportation projects. Finding transportation funds are tough to come by. This project, being in the urban renewal area and at the tail end of the lifespan of a successful urban renewal area, provided an opportunity to fund this project. The school district, as Nancy was saying when we talked with the fire district, who definitely does appreciate the financial cost that this has to them, but that they recognize the transportation benefits of the project. The school district is also planning to build a school right near this area. So there's benefits to them as well. And that's why the task force that has been meeting throughout several years to advise the city on these kinds of projects has also recommended this project go forward. It seems like it's a project that has a lot of benefit to the community and to the other taxing districts, and it's a project that doesn't have easy sources of other available funding around. The urban renewal area has the opportunity to fund this, and it has this impact of extending the lifespan for another 3 years. At that point in time, this urban renewal area would close down, and the city of Wilsonville's other urban renewal area, that west side one, is also scheduled to close down right around that same timeline. So there'd be a lot more tax revenue just a few years down the horizon that would be coming back to all of the affected taxing districts. So that's sort of where the financials are that I see them.
If I can just rebut. So I don't question the success of the district. As a matter of fact, years back I studied it, so I realize the benefit is driven. But I think that if the city, for example, financially looked at taking some of that added revenue as a result of the success of the district and put that away towards, projects such as this, that revenue stream in and of itself would be able to fund, or at least be able to bond on that to fund that project, either or. I guess it's really, again, the impacts to the rest of the county that we have concerns about. I don't question that. And it was scheduled to terminate, twice 20-year urban renewal district, so it's scheduled to end in 2020?
So it doesn't have urban renewal plans are not required to have expiration dates in them. But when we looked at the existing maximum indebtedness, the revenues coming in, and the expenditures that they have on an annual basis, the forecast was that it would close in 2020, yes.
Okay. And the commitment was, back 20 years ago, was for it to be closed in 2020, correct?
As far as I know, I don't think there was a commitment to a year end, but we did have our maximum indebtedness, and I wasn't with the city of Wilsonville at the time, so I wouldn't want to misspeak.
Right, a lot of urban renewal plans state an anticipated closure date, but the legally binding limit on urban renewal areas is that maximum indebtedness. And so once you've hit that limit, and if you don't amend it, then you need to close down the district as soon as that debt is paid off. So I'm not sure what the original intention was in terms of number of years, but we do know that our latest forecasts indicate that that would be the year of termination without this amendment.
Yep. So is there, getting back to my original question, is there a means of an adjustment or a carve-out to take the unincorporated piece out of this and continue your project?
So that would be, I think how I'm interpreting that is that if the project is currently estimated at 14 million and a portion of that project is located in unincorporated Clackamas County, is it possible that that share of the project cost that's located in Clackamas County would be funded by some other funding source, not through urban renewal, and therefore the $14 million amount being requested would be a lower dollar amount to reflect some other to-be-determined funding source contributing for that share of the project?
Yes, okay, that's what would be one means. I don't know what other, you are the experts, I am not. I'm asking the question, but specifically is that what's unique about this request versus the last request from the city of Wilsonville a couple, 3 years ago, the difference between this one and that district was there's a chunk of unincorporated Clackamas County in this one, which is creating more of a unique situation than last. So my question is, I know you can change the boundaries of urban renewal just at any time. You can expand them, you can condense them or shrink them. So I'm just curious as to what the options are.
The amount of the area that's in unincorporated Clackamas County is actually very small. It's kind of a sliver on the north side of Beckman Road, and we do expect that those lands are going to be annexed, request annexation into the city with the Frog Pond development. There's, I think, about 340 acres of residential land out there. I'm sure you're very familiar with those, Commissioner Savas. And we completed a concept plan a year and a half ago, completed the master plan, and right now we have 2 developments that are turning in land use applications for annexation and subdivision development. So likely the unincorporated areas will be coming into the city fairly soon. I don't know if that helps or not, but it's sort of a clarification, I suppose.
And similar to so there would, again, the action being requested of the Clackamas County Commission would be similar whether or not the urban renewal area included unincorporated lands. So because it includes unincorporated lands, the Clackamas County Commission has to approve any amendment to this urban renewal area. But regardless of the unincorporated lands, because this requires statutory concurrence, because it's an increase in maximum indebtedness beyond what the city can do on its own, you would still be requested to take that action. So the unincorporated area in this particular instance changes some of the verbiage, but the effect remains the same, that this commission would still need to approve this amendment for the increase in maximum indebtedness and also for the continuation of the alternative revenue sharing program that the city has pioneered.
Martha, thank you for your patience.
So when you talk about the dollar amount and fiscal impact of 2.6 million, and now I'm hearing it's just a small sliver of land, that just seems odd to me that a small sliver of land would really hit the county at 2.6 million. So is that including the area within the city as well as the sliver of land out there, the $2.6 billion?
Right. So the sliver of land is just the unincorporated area, right. But the impact to taxing districts is based on the total area.
All right. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't that piece. So it is puzzling to me why you just don't annex the area now. I mean, it seems like it would be an easier thing to actually move through that process first, get the area annexed, and then move ahead with the urban renewal.
Yeah, that would, if the area was, we're asking for 3 things. One is the approval because some of the properties are in Clackamas County and not in the city yet. And then we're asking for concurrence with the maximum indebtedness increase because it's over the statutory limitation that we could just adopt by ourselves. And then we're also asking for support of the alternative revenue sharing policy, which we've been continuing to do for many, many years, which is not taking all of the urban renewal tax increment from that area that we could, because we've tried to share the taxes in a greater way over a long time now. So regardless of whether or not those properties had annexed, we would still need to get concurrence because of the maximum statutory limitation.
Thank you.
Ken?
My only concern is $2,608,000. Okay, that's a lot of money, and that's an $800,000 hit to our budget. That's what it comes down to per year. I'm not prepared to. I have no problem with what you want to do, annexation, improvement of the road, the development of Frog Pond. I'm on board. I have a problem with that amount of money at this point in time. I'm not prepared to vote yes or no on it. I would like to table this, if it's at all possible, and explore what other options may be available on that number. If we have to some degree, cough up something, I would entertain that, okay? But at this point, 2.6 is kind of pushing the envelope. So speaking for myself, I'd like to see if we can explore some of the ideas that possibly were alluded to by Commissioner Savas, and see if there's a way we can get you what you need without it being quite as burdensome, if I may.
And
that's where I'm at.
One point that the city's finance director couldn't be here today, but she did ask me to share one point, just to put that number in context, because it is a real dollar amount. That's 2.6 million, and as you pointed out, it can pay for a lot of services. In comparison to the county's overall annual tax revenue, this impact would be a little less than half of 1% of your property tax collections. So again, it seems small in the percentage number, but still a real number when you're looking at how much you could buy. So.
And I get that, because I periodically have to make the same argument on certain issues, to be honest with you. And again, goals and objectives, I don't have a problem. You're going to find me very supportive of that, but I need to take a look at that number before I could go any further and see if there's something we can do.
I might add that the only other revenue source we have for this kind of a project is system development charges, and I know that the board is very familiar with all of these things, being in charge of a transportation system yourselves. To accrue that amount for a city is just not even, we would never have that $14 million in the bank, even if we set aside, because as a growing city, we do have a lot of old rural roads that we are turning into urban roads to make them safer and to provide service to all modes, all people, that kind of thing. And so, as we all know, the funding choices for transportation projects is really limited. This is not a regional road, so we can't count for federal dollars or Metro funding or ODOT funding for it. And for me, with the Frog Pond development taking place, which will bring, I can't remember how many homes, I think about 700 new homes to the Wilsonville on the east side there. That will be, my concern is making a safe connection, because as I said, right now it's very narrow, deer crossing, very, very steep slopes, and there's a sight distance problem. So for me, it's connecting the two sides of the community, the new residential, even with some of our jobs, and making sure they have a safe connection. So that's one of the reasons why we felt like urban renewal would be probably our only tool to fund this project. That being said.
So County Counsel.
Thank you. I just wanted a clarification as we talk about this matter. You're actually wearing 3 different fiduciary hats as you sit here. You're the Board of County Commissioners for the county, and that's the $2.6 billion that we're talking about. But this also impacts the Library District of Clackamas County, and there's about a $400,000 impact, and the 4-H and Extension District which I believe is a little under $50,000 impact. So each of those three taxing entities, of which you are the governing body, is impacted by this. And any approval, I would assume, is going to be consistent across all three. So I wanted to make sure we're flagging that.
And I'm going to butt in because I've been waiting to say, if this was part of the city, it'd be less challenging for me because the voters did vote that any changes in boundaries in Clackamas County would go to the vote of the people on urban renewal expansion. It doesn't totally apply here, but that is what we were told. So I have some concerns. Why not just annex it first? So that's my issue. And Martha?
Brought that up too. Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Bernard, but just curiosity, when you talk about all these homes, are we talking 30% below median income? Are we talking 60% or below? Are we talking 80% and above? I mean, you're going to be doing all this housing, and maybe I'm getting off a little off task, but I'm wondering about this as through an equity lens. Because certainly we have new apartments in Lake Oswego that are going to be going for $5,000 a month, so I wouldn't consider that equitable or affordable or otherwise fair housing. So what, do you have that information?
I don't know that you have any
Any
affordable housing developments
or whatever?
proposed in this area?
We do not have any affordable housing proposed for the Frog Pond area at this time. On the future expansions on the east and the south, there is more of an opportunity to pursue that, and I believe their city council's interested in that.
I believe that Wilsonville housing studies have shown that the relative amount of single-family homes to multifamily homes in the city of Wilsonville has a substantial amount of multifamily housing already, and has sort of been carrying the water on that issue for quite a while.
Yeah, but
52%.
multiple housing, multiple family homes does not mean they're affordable.
Right.
And I lived in Wilsonville, and there are a lot of apartments. But whether they're affordable or not, I'm sure they aren't. There's only one that I know of in Wilsonville that's affordable housing for seniors that had to do with the trailer park when it went away. So I heard a possible table this.
If the chair is prepared to accept the motion, I would so move.
And I would second.
It's been moved and seconded to table this item. Any further discussion? More
Should we
detail?
table it to a date certain, or should we just work that out with the city, what that timeline would be? Or
It's at the chair's discretion. If the motion does not set a date certain, it would be brought back on the agenda as the chair designates.
Yeah, maybe a little work session on this, or policy session, or
I'd like to have, I guess I'd call it an educational session, but also a serious look at how to reduce that financial impact. Again, the things that you wish to accomplish, I have no quarrel with. The cost to the county as a whole, given what our responsibilities are, is where my problem lies. And if we can address some of that, then I'd be prepared to move forward.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to table this item, and any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is consent agenda. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On today's consent agenda, under Health, Housing, and Human Services, a resolution requesting approval of a TEFRA resolution declaring Clackamas County's approval for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County to issue $34 million in revenue bonds for the development of the Rosewood Terrace apartments. Under our Department of Transportation Development, a resolution declaring the public necessity and purpose for acquisition of rights-of-way and easement for the Foster Creek at Bakers Ferry Road Bridge Scour Protection Project and authorizing negotiations and eminent domain actions. Approval of Federal Lands Access Program match agreement with Western Federal Lands Highway Division for the East Salmon River Road Surface Preservation Project. Approval of Federal Lands Access Program match agreement with Western Federal Lands Highway Division for the Lolo Pass Road Stabilization and Surface Preservation Project. Approval of a transfer of an interest in Clackamas Industrial Area Opportunities Child Site to Clackamas County Development Agency. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under County Council, approval of Amendment Number 1 to the settlement agreement between the City of Gladstone and Clackamas County. And under Business Community Services, approval of purchase and sale agreement with Port Blakely U.S. Forestry for the exchange of real property. And finally, under our Development Agency, acceptance of a transfer of interest in Clackamas Industrial Opportunities Site from Clackamas County. And that concludes the consent agenda.
All right. With that, Commissioner Savas would like to remove item A1 for a vote outside of the
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda, so that he can
support the remainder of the agenda.
Yeah, support the remainder of the agenda. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
I guess I don't have to ask. Okay. I wanted to note that the Clackamas industrial area that our roads department invested in many, many years ago is finally being paid back, because this piece of land is being developed, and that means more money for roads, so that's good. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item A1.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
On the item, let's see, for me, it's item number 9. Let me make sure I have the same one for all concerned here. It would be actually item B1. It talks about acquiring rights-of-way and easements by purchase or condemnation proceedings. I'm just curious if there have been any advanced discussions with the local property owners on this yet?
I am not aware if there have or there have not been with respect to your question. So.
I hope this does not come as a big surprise to them.
We do not condemn roads without an effort to resolve it
really
first.
is a last resort.
I'm just curious if they have had a heads up at this
Oh,
point.
yes.
It must, yeah, it's a requirement.
Okay.
It's appraised. We offer the appraised amount. They counter with an offer, and only when we can't reach a conclusion, then this might take place. Okay, all those, we didn't vote there.
One more piece.
Okay, one more.
So just a question on 15, which is the land exchange for we had the policy session, and that was the one. I'm just wanting to correct the record that I abstained on because I was wanting input from other groups. Which one? This one?
I don't know what item that is in the.
It's number 15.
It's
in the consent
specifically
agenda,
approval of a
though.
purchase and sale agreement with Port Blakely.
Oh, this is that piece of land?
This is the exchange for the work. Yeah, here we go. Thank you, Rick,
that's
for.
why he's here.
Exchange, okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Gruen, County Parks and Forest Manager. Commissioner Fisher, this is not the issue that we discussed last week for the acquisition of land. This was a prior approved by the board exchange of land between Port Blakely and our Clackamas County Forest Holdings, where we're exchanging 50 acres to them and we're getting 50 acres back to consolidate properties.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. I just saw this and I just had a question, and I'm fine with moving forward with this. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Commissioners.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And then the next item, which we removed, was A1, which is approval of a TEFRA resolution declaring Clackamas County's approval of Housing Authority, Clackamas County HACC, to issue 34 million in revenue bonds for the development of Rosewood Terrace. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved. Oh, second? Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve item A1. Any further discussion? And we pulled this because Paul's consistently voted a certain way. Want to give him that opportunity again. Yeah. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much. And the next item is county administrator updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of items to share with you. One, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge two of our employees from the juvenile department. They recently saved a man's life while they were dining at a restaurant. Ryan Kersey and Todd Kennedy, they are relief workers who are on-call employees who handle youth being brought into custody of the department. Ryan and Todd together performed CPR on the distressed man and supported him until emergency personnel could arrive. And this action is directly relevant to this heroic pair's employment with the county, because all juvenile staff receive training and recertification in CPR as a requirement for department operations. Ryan relayed his thanks for the continued training, and he specifically noted that keeping the song Staying Alive in his head helped keep the CPR pace. And of course, you all remember just a week or so ago getting a little practice learning how to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to say it's an outstanding job that both Ryan and Todd performed, and both have received awards from Clackamas Fire District Number 1 for their actions. Then the other item I wanted to share with you, I'm sort of torn about this a bit because tomorrow, February 16th, Netflix will debut a new television show that's filmed right here in Clackamas County, and it revolves around high schoolers in the community of Boring during the 1990s. The comedy, the title I struggle with, it's called Everything Sucks. But I will say this, that our business and economic development team, in spite of the rather provocative title of the show, played a large part in making sure that the filming happened here. And I just really wanted to relate a note of appreciation that we received from the Netflix location manager. So let me just read this. The Clackamas County Business and Economic Development staff's understanding for the industry is quite impressive as you go through their permitting process. It's thorough enough to ensure minimal impact on the public, but efficient enough to turn around permits on short timelines. You can feel the enthusiasm that their staff has for supporting the film business in Clackamas County. They are quick to connect productions with the right people for scouting locations, obtaining a complicated permit, or working seamlessly with the public. So I just wanted to say a great job to our business and economic development team. And if you do watch the show, keep an eye out for the Barton Bridge in this 10-episode series. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you.
Will it be done?
Barton Bridge or the Carver Bridge?
Carver.
That's the Barton Bridge.
Barton Bridge, okay.
It was actually filmed in the old Oregon City High School, right here in Oregon City, Jackson campus.
Good. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yes, well, Tuesday we had the great pleasure event of opening or cutting the ribbon or being part of a ribbon cutting ceremony at the Clackamas Women's Services Shelter, something that I got involved in early on as a commissioner. Actually, this first big step was moving it from the offices of Oregon City to actually a facility down the way we call the Safe Place, for a facility, our one-stop place to ease and make far easier the burden of someone who's suffering from a domestic violence situation and their kids in tow, perhaps navigating a very complex legal system and going from door to door to place. It puts it all in one place. So having them move to the Safe Place was a big first step, and the county commissioners at the time made that investment, along with the sheriff and the DA's office and a number of supports of other nonprofits. And another big step that was accomplished was expanding the shelter, which 7 years ago I had the privilege of touring the old shelter. And I remember it's small, and I remember standing in a portion of it late Tuesday when I asked Melissa, it really feels like I'm standing in the same place in the same surroundings. She goes, yeah, it's because the table is the same table that was used in the facility before. So retained that important large table in the kitchen area, but it significantly expanded the capacity for women and family who are in desperate need of shelter in a situation of domestic violence. So I was, Chair Bernard spoke at that event, and so I think it was a good day to see that come to fruition. This morning had quite the impassioned discussion at JPAC, and it followed really a discussion that originated yesterday morning, and I spoke to it a little bit, but not in great detail. But yesterday morning at C4 Metro Subcommittee, the issue of this tolling had come up, and we had a presentation from ODOT. A very nice lady, did a great job making her presentation, but very critical piece of this came. I was already aware of it, but again, just to put this all in context, the legislature said to ODOT, "You will put together a tolling study and analysis and bring back to us a recommendation no later than December of 2018, which is just months to come." That has forced a compression of a lot of processes, and in that compression, I think public involvement and analysis is going to be a lot shorter than I would prefer. And so I brought this up yesterday morning, and knowing the legislature is in session, that this might be the ideal time. So on Tuesday, I want to bring this forward as an issue that we lobby at the legislature for an extension of time, because even then, even as presented by ODOT, this tolling thing may not even take root or actually be implemented until 5, 6, 10 years from now. So what's the rush? Let's get it right. So we got agreement, and we had consensus yesterday morning, so it was brought up this morning at JPAC, and I made, and here's the key where I'm going with this, I made it a very impassioned plea as they were rolling out the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan they're moving forward with, is that there are not a lot of alternatives for residents in Clackamas County. This came up yesterday, and I brought it up this morning. And the Regional Transportation Plan looks at the region and has a strategy for the region, but it has not done a sub-regional analysis, meaning that in general, we're doing really good. But when you really get down to it, Clackamas County is really not doing very well. We've been essentially marginalized as far as investments over decades of underinvestment. And the way we're structured is we plan regionally, we think regionally, but we don't spend regionally. We spend in a way that is actually more focused on where the population is. So it's not equitable, it's not equal. And therefore, we are falling farther and farther behind as Clackamas County. So as it relates to tolling is that our citizens don't have the options of alternative means of transportation. We're just gonna have to pay the fee and pay the fee, or whatever that fee may be, which is very problematic. The part in which I did not anticipate having so much concern about this was when, in public testimony this morning at JPAC's, there was a mention of it by a local elected official that perhaps we should toll every road in Clackamas County. Now let's think about that for a minute. We're to toll every road in Clackamas County, perhaps, and look at some other models of doing that, and not just Clackamas County, but the region. And I go back to, okay, how severely that would impact Clackamas County residents, and frankly, some residents in Washington County as well, because Washington County found themselves in agreement with my comments. So this morning, right about now actually, the Oregon Transportation Commission is meeting, and we have some people down there. We voted to submit a letter to the OTC and to the legislature, and whoever it may be, ODOT, that they look at this. So I think that we could complement that on Tuesday and talk about sending a letter to extend the time period. But if we don't do the analysis and we don't look at the impacts to underserved areas such as Clackamas County, our citizens will be in far more harm and be far more severely impacted than those who live in the center of Portland, which they have transit, they have light rail, they have Portland streetcar, they have many options. We do not. But I really want to emphasize my closing comment. I really want to emphasize that the public process thus far, and I'll show this to the camera here, I'll hold this up here, but all the way to the right here is how much public involvement there's been in Clackamas County. the little bar, the little red bar here. And the other bar all the way to which is probably your left, your right? Yeah, your right is Clark County. So Clark County had the highest public involvement, followed by Multnomah County. And way down in the scale is Washington County and then Clackamas County with very little public involvement. The blue lines are the population of those areas, and the red lines are the actual involvement. So we have not been really represented accurately. That's not ODOT's fault, but I think, again, if we can ask for an extension, there could be a greater involvement. So I made a plea this morning for greater analysis. I made a plea for looking at this thing from an equity lens, and equality, and this is what I'll be bringing forth. But we just can't have these impacts to our residents at this point in time. It's got to be a level playing field.
Do you have a microscope so I could see that?
We can post this on the website.
Magnified glass.
Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Paul, first I want to say I agree with you 100% in terms of our position in this region and finance for transportation. I want to add one little piece to that, and this is just more of an awareness thing for voters out there, and that is that the days of the federal government ponying up 80 or 90% of infrastructure projects are basically over. So we cannot expect to see a freeway expansion funded by the federal government. We cannot expect to see our sewer plant expansion funded by the federal government. The $200 billion of a $1.5 trillion national proposal basically takes $200 million from a number of other programs and puts all of the responsibility on states and private enterprise to solve these infrastructure problems. So we are going to have to be extraordinarily creative as we go forward, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. But in the bottom line is going to be this: it's actually going to cost our local taxpayers throughout the region and throughout the state more money. We always have enough money. In fact, we've had $4 trillion worth of money to go to war in a desert, but we don't have $4 trillion to spend on our own people. And that's the position we're in right now. On a different note, at AOC this week, we had two, what I consider to be particularly important bills going before the legislature. One on strangulation and the other one on rape kit funding for evaluations of rape kits. Initially, AOC was taking no position on either one of them. I was a bit surprised and shocked at that, so I brought it up at our public safety meeting, and they in turn have now decided to take a position in favor of both of those bills, which strengthens the penalties for strangulation events where mostly men use strangulation to intimidate or hurt their spouses. And then the rape kit issue is one that's a nationwide one where literally hundreds of thousands of kits have been taken but not been processed, leaving women who've already been victimized even more in the lurch. So in both cases, the Public Safety Committee took a position in support, and we asked the AOC to send a letter. That was requested by Commissioner Fisher, and they have agreed to do that. And kudos to Commissioner Fisher for going down to Salem and testifying particularly on that strangulation issue. It's shocking to me that anybody would see it as anything less than a felony, and quite frankly, what are jail cells and prison cells for but for people who do violence to other people? I'm pretty liberal when it comes to programs to help people that don't hurt others. But when you hurt somebody else, there needs to be a serious consequence for that behavior. And that's what jail cells and prison cells are for. The other issue I got to testify on myself was, believe it or not, CLT. What's that? Cross-laminated timber. And there is a bill, 4109, in the legislature that would include cross-laminated timber as part of the carbon reduction processes in any forthcoming carbon tax type bill. Where that's going to go, I don't know, but I can tell you that the committee was quite receptive to the testimony, and hopefully that will be one more piece of this puzzle going forward in establishing this industry, both in Clackamas County and in the state. What else do I have? I did want to comment that the Villages of Hope, which we all attended that opening, there's two groups I really want to say thank you to. One of them are the builders themselves, whose foundation paid an incredible amount of money and put an incredible amount of time in building the facility. And to one of our very specific local businesses, Benchmade Knives, who, as I can gather, actually paid for that whole kitchen, which was quite nice of them too. And the last one is we all attended the luncheon for the tourism department, where they're doing their current work sessions. Enjoyed the lunch very much. And on that note, I will switch over to the dog. This is Bentley, a fluffy, friendly one-year-old Pekingese. His breed is an old one originating in China, where they were sometimes called lion dogs and owned by royalty. True to his breed history, he is a lively, loyal friend that enjoys lap time and cuddling on his terms. Walks around the block will keep him fit and happy, and some regular grooming to make his coat shine. Being a small gentleman, he would prefer living with children over 9 years old. For more information about Bentley and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Next up would be Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the last week, I've spent quite a bit of time connecting with residents and voters in our county and re-emphasizing, hearing the message, how important quality of life is when it comes to housing affordability related to workforce, related to transportation. I know all of us as a board and as a county are working very hard on those issues. Very much on sort of overshadowing all of that has been the issue of public safety. We saw the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida yesterday. I was extremely moved. I don't know if you saw this on CNN last night. There were two young men who were they're high school students, and the ending comment after they were being interviewed by the press was the need for our community and our society to come together in this very fragile time. And it was such a statement of wisdom and truth and maturity. It very much moved me in that moment of watching the evening news. I do want to also emphasize that with that tragic event, there was on Tuesday morning, I was not able to participate in policy session, so thank you to my colleagues for filling in for me there, because I was in Salem testifying on a strangulation bill. And this bill is something that all of our leaders in Clackamas County, from our district attorney to our sheriff to all of our county commission, are wrapping around and advocating for. Because right now, when in an intimate relationship, if a partner is being strangled, it is a misdemeanor. It is a misdemeanor. And so when our district attorneys are looking at how to charge these, the spectrum is from misdemeanor to attempted murder. So what this bill does is simply reclassifies strangulation as a felony, which really puts the issue where it should be. And it's quite an honor to share in this advocacy with Melissa Erlbaum, our executive director at Clackamas Women's Services, with our sheriff, with our district attorney, with all of you in making a stand, because it is so important that as we promote justice in our community, that we look at accountability as well. While we all want to reduce crime, reduce prison beds, we also need to use prison for what it's meant for, and that is for our most violent criminals. So those things have been on the forefront of my mind, along with opening, which I know we've all mentioned, the shelter, which is so important, and as we all move forward on our quality of life and continue moving forward in our community, public safety being such a critical component of that. So.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, a few things. I spent all of Monday down in Salem with the Association of Oregon Counties, and I think that some of my colleagues were there. They had an opportunity to go to some of the meetings. I actually spent the day pretty much in executive session where we were reviewing budgets and taking a look at how we are going to pull together a strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years for the organization. So despite the fact I wasn't in Veterans, I think you were, Ken, and I didn't get to go to any of the legislative meetings. We are still doing, I think, important work for the future of the Association of Oregon Counties. Also, Commissioner Savas and I went to the Housing Land Associates meeting on Friday. He covered the morning and I covered the afternoon, and in particular in the afternoon they had a session on rural housing initiatives, which I was grateful to be there for. They talked about Morrow County, how Morrow County is helping to solve their workforce housing needs because of the workforce housing needs they have because of the port. So I always remind people we are an urban, suburban and rural counties, so our strategies are going to have to cover the gamut of what's going to be necessary to provide adequate housing for folks in all three of those regions in our county. Also, yeah, the Village of Hope ribbon cutting. It was a pleasure to be there. A while back, I was on ClackCo Women's Services Board, where I advocated for additional state dollars for that organization. They were still in downtown downtown Oregon City, and they were beginning to work towards the idea of, kind of combining into a justice center. So I spent about 2 years on that board, and it's always a pleasure to go back. Had toured the old facility a while ago, and it was wonderful to see the new facility and how inviting it's going to be for women and children as they move from an abusive environment into, we hope, a stable life with stable housing. Attended the Tourism Development Council Board retreat for lunch. I have to say they do a fabulous job. They are very professional. I think that they are considered to be one of the premier tourism boards actually in the state of Oregon with their marketing strategy. So very, very great to see that. Finally, MPAC last evening, the Metropolitan Policy Advisory Council on Land Use. Largely, we really talked about the bond moving forward, that public outreach process. And this is a housing bond that will help all of us in the region hopefully leverage additional dollars to deal with the housing crisis. They are going to have a community leaders forum on March 2nd. I hope some of my other commissioners can make it. I actually do have a conflict. I will be at the National Association of Counties, and so I will not make that particular meeting, but I think that we will be well represented. Okay, word of the week, which I think is appropriate. The word of the week is compassion. It is a noun. It's a feeling of sympathy and sorrow for another who has had misfortune and having a strong desire to ease the hardship. Did you know that compassion is of Latin origin? The world would be a better place if more people had compassion for one another. And I want to thank Kevin for this. He helps me. He does the word of the week with me now. We have a lot of fun with that. Okay, arts and culture activities in the county. It's coming up on the screen here, I think, any minute. There we go. Willamette Falls Symphony in concert, Sunday, February 18th. And I am not going to go through all of these particular things that are happening here with the violin concertos and so on, because I don't think my Italian is good enough to actually pronounce these things appropriately. However, this is going to be in Oregon City United Methodist Church. Tickets are $10 to $15 at the door, and it's wonderful music by a local group. It's quite outstanding. And God, that's good. Sweeney Todd Dinner Theater, Sunday, February 18th, 6 to 9 p.m. 1 week before the premiere, catch a special preview performance of selections from Merrill Hearst's production of Sweeney Todd, performed dinner theater style. A dinner of what else? Meat pies and English beer will be served. God. Well, that's scary. Along with many other surprises, an admission ticket gets you a full 3-course dinner of English specialties, alcohol available. Proceeds support the Marylhurst University Music Program. Tickets $20 to $40 online, and it is at the Flavia Salon at Marylhurst University. And dare I ask Commissioner Fisher, what is your significant other producing right now? Because he also is a theater, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Stumptown Stages is premiering a new musical called Folk City. It opens this Friday at Portland 5 Centers for the Arts. It is based on a bar that was in New York City, where Peter, Paul, and Mary and Bob Dylan got their start. There was a bestseller novel written about that time, and now called Folk City, and now that's been turned into a musical. It is premiering in Portland, hoping to go back to New York to perform. So it's a pretty big deal for Portland to have this new musical.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, with that, again, I'd like to apologize that you guys have to go through the punishment I'm receiving, and you know, it's my responsibility, not yours. So I again apologize to all of you and the staff to have to endure what, you know, I probably deserve some punishment. But anyway, again, I was excited about the Clackamas Women's Services facility. It's the largest one in the metro area. They serve about 100 people a year. Great facility. The home builders did a fantastic job. Beautiful woodwork. I was quite amazed. Spent some time in Salem last week, I think twice. I can't even remember. And the session ends not so far away, so they got a lot to do, and I certainly hope that when we get to the strangulation bill, that is resolved, and those people who, I guess the statistics are, people who strangle tend to be murderers. And we went to a presentation maybe a year ago?
Less than that.
Less than a year ago, where a specialist in strangulation was there and talked about, I mean, if you can imagine looking somebody in the face and strangling them, that's a violent, violent crime. And it should be dealt with a harsh sentence. So with that, have a great weekend, and Monday is President's Day. So for those of you with a holiday, enjoy. Thank you very much. We're